Thank you everybody for joining us today. We're the National Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Music Office. My name is Leah Flanagan. I'm the director of the office. We're an Indigenous-led initiative of APRA AMCOS. So we run programs, for creation of songs, our Resonate program. We work on mentorships to upskill writers in their creative endeavours. We've just recently taken on some grants in partnership with Music Australia. And these grants were to specifically get money and funding for artists. Music Australia wanted to directly get funding to artists that had projects up their sleeve. The first edition was recording, the second was marketing, and this is the final iteration, which is all about touring. So we do have the odd kind of grant through APRA AMCOS with like the Art Music Fund, our Professional Development Awards, but we're not normally a grants organisation. It's just a special project that we've taken on in partnership with Music Australia. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm on Larrakia land in the far north, the top end of in Darwin. And I would like to pay my respects to the custodians of the land that I'm on and to the land that you mob are all dialing in from today. So I would like to introduce Rusty Smith, the underdog of the Australian music industry, blackfella and non-Indigenous music industry, a stalwart, as they say, someone who's been around doing this for many, many years in so many iterations. Thank you so much for being part of this conversation and presentation today.
Thank you, Leah. It's nice to be part of the conversation with other artists and First Nation artists especially. I live on Mount Tamborine, and it's the Wandjeriba country, and I'm not from here. I'm actually a desert boy, so I'm a long way from home. I'm actually a Port Augusta boy, so I do live here with my wife and 2 kids, and they're at school at the moment. So thank you, Jesus. Hallelujah, amen. But it's nice to, if people got questions about touring, I've known Leah for a very, very long time, and for me, it's more about if I can give back to young artists about touring, the do's and don'ts, and how important it is for bands and artists to go through and become who they are.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, one of the things that we wanted to do today is not only talk through the eligibility requirements of the grant, talk through some of the areas where we've seen people get stuck in previous rounds, but also like to have a chat with Russell, who's an experienced tour manager and artist, someone that knows touring more than anyone I know. So we thought we'd just have a little conversation about the role of a tour manager and like the role of the different roles that people or not necessarily like the different sorts of people that you like work with when you're on the road, from production managers, tour managers, lighting, all of that. So let's just have a chat. So I guess to kick it off, I just wanted to ask you, what inspired you, like a boy from Port Augusta. How did you end up being a tour manager and working with bands?
Music's been in my life for a long, long time. Growing up on a community and missions and stuff that you get to do, go to church and sing hymns and all that sort of stuff. That's all that's been ingrained for a lot of Aboriginal communities for such a long time. So that history's been there. So I'm not going to get to the political point of all that sort of stuff. But music for me has been my way out of community and starting off as a young artist, and you think you write your first song, you think it's a great song, but it was just a shit song, but in saying all that, I end up moving to Melbourne in early 90s, and I started to watch the music industry within there. I met my first working experience with Aboriginal artists was working with Jill Shelton. Jill, I don't know if people know Jill Shelton. She's another one that's been around the industry for such a long time, but she's been kind of an important figure that when it comes to touring, she knows how to tour. So she taught me how to work with bands. She started with Titus, the you know, the three Indigenous women, well, two Indigenous women, one non-Indigenous, but you know, in the 90s, and then it went on to Archie and Ruby. So before Jill got to Archie and Ruby, there was Julie Hickson, who spent time, you know, as their tour manager and management for there for such a long time. But you get to know bands over years. You know, off and on, we're working with Archie and Ruby, and then going back full time with Archie, right to the very end of his musical career and right at the end of his life. You get to see a lot of different elements of touring, especially overseas, especially around Australia, especially in community. Oh, Archie is such an icon when it comes to community, and we just got to protect who he was right to the very end, you know. And we did that job. My job was to. They don't see the behind scenes of touring. Especially with Uncle Arch. I mean, I'm still come to terms with his passing, but you know, because you know, because he was on oxygen, so we used to wheel him out on stage and wheel him back out, and you know, he'll sing his heart out on stage. And then he'll literally collapse behind stage because he used his energy to make his songs so people can hear what he's written. You know, his love for music, his love for Ruby was really important. He was such an iconic man, who he was. And then going, I mean, in between working with a rumpy band, I mean, rumpy bands, they're such an iconic band, you know. I mean, I think George is the, you know, the Bon Scott of the Aboriginal community, which he was, you know. There were at the Adelaide Festival a few times, we had to flank him with 2 security guards because people mobbed him for who he was. And seeing that was like, okay, but it was really important to have him because he's such an iconic, you know, First Nation artist that really needs to be his life. Well, I shouldn't say his name, but as respect to him, but he's such an iconic man. I mean, working with that band, it was amazing. And then working with Frank Yama, another artist that we work with. You know, I mean, those. I mean, for me, working with Frank is because he's Pitjantjatjara, so I got to know him a bit more, and it was hard work, but he's come through. He's another artist in his own right, you know. So, which is really fantastic. Yeah.
I guess you've been able to work like it's incredible, really, like Russell, like to be doing it for so long and for so many artists like on the rise. But then once again, that the sense of kind of community that music brings, and also the life of a touring artist. I guess, you know, from an APRA perspective, you know, yes, we see people earning royalties and doing well from their music, but for so many musicians, learning to tour is your bread and butter, is how you survive. And I guess there's no like, this is a role. Like you, by the sounds of it, you've been almost every role.
Oh, absolutely.
It's just.
I mean, for me, it's more about, especially when you take on bush bands, you've got to take their role, pick them up, you know, especially when they come from a, you know, hot climate and they're playing in, you know, different cities where it's cold. So you have to go take them, you know, guys, you need to get warm, you need to go shopping, there's a budget for you, let's do that. You got to make sure they're fed, they're, you know, in the hotel rooms, they're not trashing the hotel rooms by that stage. It's been done, don't worry about that. But constantly you got to be on 24/7 with those, you know, with those bands. But at the same time, you get the joy of them really playing out there in front of, you know, different festivals. That's the joy for me, is seeing, you know, different artists come through. And I've seen many bush bands come through. And I've been asked to, you know, tour a lot, but giving back is really important. And that's what I'm doing, giving back, you know.
Well, it's good that you bring up bush bands, because when we talk about eligibility in a little bit, like, you know, we really want to make this, you know, the idea is that there'll be 5 shows. Like an eligibility requirement for this grant is that we want to see a minimum of 5 shows kind of strung together in what looks like a tour. And we understand that when you are living quite remote and regional, that getting to and from each place is difficult. Sell us, like, what is a really compelling tour? Why is this tour significant for you to do? I know previous grants have, with the Australia Council, previous Australia Council have been, you know, we need to see a percentage of, in regional and remote, we want to see a percentage of, you know, city and metropolitan. For us, that's not necessarily the case. We want to see a realistic tour, and that doesn't mean you have to go from Alice Springs to Brisbane to sit. Like, if you want to do that, that's fine. And we don't want people from the bush and from regional and remote areas to feel that their tours are not eligible for this round. We just want to see what 5 shows looks like. You could be you could have a band and go and do a series of solo shows and then do a series of band shows. All of that's eligible. We just want it to, you are going to be competing with other applications. So you just want to make sure it looks really good. Like, why would someone want to fund the tour? What are some of the key things that you'll need to think about when putting together a tour, whether and like any handy tips for putting your ideas, taking your tour idea and actually putting it down on paper?
Depends on who the artist is and how many people they're taking, and how much payment are we going to pay. You know, what I do for my crew is that minimum of $500 in their pocket per show, plus accommodation, plus whatever's per diems, if we have per diems. Per diem's great, but unless you're making some, you know, some money, that helps. But, you know, it depends on how big the band is. You know, the band can be 1 to 5 to 6 to whatever. It's making sure that it's getting them their costs are covered. They're here for doing 5 shows, and every 5 shows you try and make money as much as possible, especially in gigs. Depends how big the gig is, and depends what sort of crowd they'll pull in. That's the key. I mean, if you're going to do, you know, $50 per show at, you know, 100 people, that's a bit of money for bands in their pockets. Then you got to pay your crew, and then you got to pay the you know, the front of house engineer. All those sort of costs adds up. So you got to think about that. You know, even down to airfares and hiring cars. You know, put them in on tour. So they're the costs. There's a lot of hidden costs within touring. I mean, the budget you might say 20 grand seems great, but you need to really concentrate and think, how do I manage this budget between X amount of people? So that's the key. I mean, you talked about bush bands. Yeah, you're right. They might do community gigs, but there's an element of in-kind support. They might say, hey, are we going to stay with these mob here? They're going to feed us, but that's in-kind support, and that should be written down. And then they can go on different shows. Then they might do a show in Alice Springs, and they might get paid for that, which is good. So that's the key. It's making sure that bush bands know that how their budget is set.
Across all kind of business relations, you want to make sure your budget's strong. But I guess the idea of profit versus loss, a profit and loss on each show is really handy. So making sure that you're treating each individual show like, are you going to make money from this show? From like, you're going to get a guarantee fee. And so you don't need to worry too much about selling tickets and like the risk associated with that. But you also might have a show where you're selling tickets, like Rusty said, at like, you know, $50 a ticket or $20 a ticket. And then you need to kind of like project what you think you might make, and then put that against what each show is going to cost you to run. And so putting every expense down in a spreadsheet, in an Excel spreadsheet, is really helpful, because you can, you know, you're tracking things as you go. It could be a venue hire fee. It might be the front of house engineer. You might not get a rider. You might need to like pay for your food. Sometimes venues do that. So yeah, all these hidden expenses, anything, petrol to and from the place, your flights, your accommodation, in kind is great, because if you're band that's touring with quite limited resources and you want to save the $20,000 to cover fees and airfares, maybe you're saying, well, you know what, we've got accommodation covered. So at $150 per head that we would normally save, we're getting this donated to us in each location. So yes, accommodation's covered in kind. Put a number against it because it shows us that you've thought about what accommodation prices look like across the country. This all helps you when you start to, I mean, there's probably a lot of professional artists that are used to touring on the call as well. So it helps you get an idea of what the actual costs are for touring when you are doing it without financial assistance through a grant.
What you said there is like artists touring and doing in-kind support. I've had a conversation with Paul Kelly. I have a relationship with him when I played Dig for him, which was great. But he was saying that even on stage he said this, when Don Walker was in Sydney and Paul Kelly was in Sydney for for doing stuff, he used to go and crash on Don Walker's couch. I mean, you don't hear those stories, but this is coming from such an iconic man called Paul Kelly, who literally started off crashing on people's couches.
I mean, before the conversation started with everybody in the room, we talked about the community that's made from touring, yep. Which sustains you throughout your entire career, and a good way to catch up with family too. So you save money on accommodation. You go and visit your relatives you haven't seen for a while.
We've all done that. Don't worry.
I guess we'll go into talking through the form in a minute and just some more eligibility requirements. But is there kind of any other tips where you can recommend people could save money from touring?
I think as a solo artist that might help. Touring a big band's the expense is really, it's big. But if a solo artist, I think that you need to, think about where you want to play and what sort of venues. It gets down to venues and how many people you want to get through the door. That experience is really important. If you're an unknown entity of muso, you won't pull anybody. But if you play with an iconic artist, doesn't matter who it is, that you play support with, you can make some bit of money on that side,
And that's right. Like if you've got a great support and you need help getting to play, this is fantastic. Yeah. Like this is absolutely eligible as well. If you can't spend close to the 20,000, then this grant's probably you wouldn't be eligible for grant because it's for it's a $20,000 sum, not less. If you put in less than what the grant amount is for, then it wouldn't be considered eligible. But we do want to see that there is equal contribution, like we talked about what in-kind support. Make sure you add up what your in-kind support could be in order to kind of spend that $20,000. We're all used to touring on low budgets, but I guess have a think about, well, what does it look like to not tour on a low budget then? So if you've got the tour kind of put together and say you've got a run of 10 shows and you're so used to getting paid nothing because musicians don't get paid a great deal. Yeah. So actually think about what it looks like when you do get paid. Like Rusty said, like I make sure I pay my musicians, $500 a show. Like we want people to get paid. It's the purpose of the grant, but we also want to see that you've put a plan in place that takes into consideration the expenses when touring, because an element of this grant is an exercise. We want to see our mob touring and touring successfully. Getting a run of festivals is fantastic, but what about everything in between? Understanding, and getting paid, We'll go through some quick eligibility. So this could be things for artist fees, airfares, accommodation, a tour manager fee. This isn't for marketing and promotion of a tour. That was the previous grant. You might want to hire someone to come and take photos for you or do some videography for some of your shows, especially if you're in regional areas and it's really hard to get out into the cities. Everything's online. All of these kind of touring expenses are all eligible. Only one application per person. So if you're in a band, you can't apply, like 3 people in the band can apply for the one for the grant because it's only one grant per band, ensemble, soloist. Round closes on the 22nd of December. it'll be reviewed by an external panel, which will, so we do all the, you know, getting all the files ready, we hand it over to an external panel and they make the final call on who receives the funding. These grants are designed for the artist. There are plenty of grants available for touring companies and for arts organisations wanting to tour artists. That's, you know, they exist. These particular grants are for the everyday artist who is looking to tour. So if you have the name that is on the application needs to be the name on the ABN and the invoice. If you are a band from the bush and you have concerns about that, please reach out to us and we can have a conversation about how to troubleshoot some of that. Yeah, but we would recommend contacting Centrelink if you think it's going to greatly impact your tax.
There's a question here, a disability question about, you know, an artist that has a disability. Is there any elements of
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're just say additional support, you need a carer on the road or someone to assist that particular artist to get to and from, yes, that is an eligible member of the touring party that needs to be paid, accommodated. You know, yes, it's absolutely covered. Please include those costs. We want to see people getting paid, and, you know, especially, you know, artists that need a bit of extra help touring. Absolutely. Please write that in to the plan and the budget. Please, are DJ tours eligible? The activity must be in support of music that you create as a music creator. So if you're playing other people's music and you're touring as a DJ, no, you wouldn't be considered eligible. If you are a DJ making your own music and you want to do a tour of like club shows and things like that, yes, that would make you eligible. I hope that helps clarify that. Please reach out to us if you do want to talk about that further. We've talked about in-kind. The reason we're harping on about it is because touring is certainly the place where you do not realise how much in-kind support you will incur that will really help boost up that side of your budget to show that you are receiving 20,000, but you do have an additional amount of support here. So if your budget is just 20,000 from us and that's covering the whole tour, it's not, it won't look as competitive as the other grants. We really encourage you to show that there are other expenses making up for your tour. Going to go through the form, make sure you have all of this filled out. Anything that has a little red star against it needs to be filled out. Otherwise, your form will not forward to the next page. If you want to upload your art CV, you're more than welcome to. Otherwise, you can attach a bio. It just tells us a little bit about you and who you are. Never assume that the assessors know who you are, right? Always put in some information that tells a story about who you are and the experience that you've had as an artist. We talked about the ABN, making sure that if your name is on the application, it is your ABN that needs to be on the form and active. So once again, anyone who's having issues in that space, please email us at natsimo@apra.com.au. So we'll go through the name of your project, a bit of a project summary. I recommend typing everything out in a Word document and then copying and pasting that content into these boxes. The total amount must equal $20,000. It says here, what is the expected start date of your project? It has to be between the 1st of March 2025 and the 1st of February 2026. So it can be a short tour. You can give yourself a bit of time, but please make sure that those dates are between then. And a start and end date is important because your acquittal for the grant, so when you need to kind of break down what you report to us, what you spent where you spent your money, is 13 weeks after your finish date. If you are having trouble completing that acquittal by 13 weeks, just reach out to us and ask for an extension. That is absolutely fine. We need to know your tour plan. We need to know the cities, the venues. We want to see confirmations. It's okay to have the odd gig that isn't confirmed. That's a bit of a, you know, on your wish list, but we need to see a minimum of 5 confirmed venues, and we need to see evidence of them being confirmed. That evidence could easily just be an email between you and a venue, or a promoter, or or an artist that you're doing a support for. Just take a screenshot of it or save it as a PDF, and then what you can do is you pull all of those kind of confirmations together and you attach them in the document as support material. If you're having trouble attaching it to the form, please email us and let us know that you're going to email us your support material. That is absolutely fine. Please do not email us MP3s, WAV files, or any kind of listening files. We want examples of your music in links. So always make sure that the links that you send will go through. There's no blockers, there's no passwords. Or if there's a password, you give us the password. Project personnel. This is important. We've got this box here called yes confirmed, no unconfirmed. When I talked about, the confirmation from venues, it could be the same. You could send an email to your band saying, hi guys, can I just confirm that you guys are touring blah, blah, gig 1, gig 2, gig 3, gig 4, gig 5, all the way to the 10 shows that you're going to do, and get them all. If they all go, yep, I confirm, attach all of those emails. That is sufficient support material. You don't need everybody to write you an essay. It's great if you can get them to write a letter of support to say that they confirm their involvement in your project. But if you're having trouble getting that because musicians are slack, then an email is sufficient. Now we talk about, we've introduced a lot of these ICIP clauses, these Indigenous Cultural Intellectual Property clauses. These are to kind of get people thinking about whether they're working with their own cultural heritage or someone else's. If you're working with your own culture, touring a show that's, featuring a lot of cultural IP and it's yours, all you need to do is go, I am using my own IP, my own cultural songs. If you're using someone else's, we need to see a letter of support to say that they're happy for you to use their content. It doesn't need to be too yes, we want to see you've had a really what's the right word? Not formal conversation, but a proper conversation with people, so everyone understands their rights when it comes to the use of their culture. But it also, like I said, can just be an email going, look, I'm happy for you guys to use these songs or these stems in your music, that things like that. Talk to us if you have any concerns about that clause. There's support material here, so you can attach all of this. There's this wonderful website that you can use with Adobe called PDF Merge. You can merge all of those documents together and just attach it as one long if you feel like you've got more than 3 support material, if you want to add more than just the 3 that's kind of listed here. Letters of confirmation. Once again, examples of your work, please use links, listening links.
Hey, Nathaniel, sorry, can you put that down on the chat about the PDF Adobe link?
PDF merge?
Yeah, because I think that's important, that people think, look, if they need to write stuff, it's there. They can find out where they can get a copy of it.
Yeah, so I think there's multiple free ones online, and you can just Google, but Nathaniel can chuck it in the chat, because I think Adobe sometimes you might have to pay for it, but Google how to merge PDFs and things like that. Yeah, no, but that's really good, because I always just, it's I just ask Google for everything. How do you do this? How do you fix a car, Google?
That's right. And the other important thing too, what you said about this is, is actually reporting back all your touring stuff. That's the key, because sometimes you can, if you don't report this back, you can get a name against you. I mean, it sounds a bit weird, but that's all part of touring, granting. It does happen.
You know the world of grants, and it's true. Hey, if you don't acquit it properly and prove where you've spent the money, then you might not get funded again.
Totally. Yeah. So that's it. That's really important for our mob to know, that if you can't do it, get someone else to write it for you and put it, send it back in. All that's they want to be picked off, they've reported back to us. You know what I mean?
Yeah, just because your name is on the application and your ABN, you can still get help from someone to help you write the application. That is absolutely fine.
That's a good question.
The songwriter is recognised as an emerging elder with a letter from local.
That's a very good question.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you, Karen. That's a great example. So project activities, once again, give everything a timeline. Make sure that you've thought about when you're going to spend the money, when the activity is going to start. Remember, when we see lots of no's ticked, when the assessors see lots of no's, they think that you haven't confirmed it. So really make sure that you tick yes. We need to see that you know that it's confirmed.
Yeah,
the total amount 20,000. Now this here, confirmed, unconfirmed. This is where people get stuck. You can put unconfirmed income. So like if you're projecting you're going to sell 100 tickets at $20 at a show, put that in there. You can say unconfirmed income, and you can go and then in the income source description, you can say based number, based on selling 100 tickets at $20. And that's still really, really strong. You could then say the confirmed is the 20,000. You could say, hey, we've got a festival down the coast. They're going to pay us $3,000. That's confirmed income. So just make sure you show us when it is confirmed and when it's not confirmed.
Just a question. That $20,000, that's really important for, especially First Nation artists. But if you still need a little bit more money, I think that you need to go and find other avenues too, but still have that $20,000 there. A little bit extra helps, but if you're in different areas of Australia, you might go back to your, community groups. They might say, yeah, we can chuck in the $5 here or whatever. It's the little things. It's the little bit of money that helps artists get through.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you have got other income from other funders, put that in. Like that's not going to be a negative mark against your name. It goes to show that you're really working hard to get a great tour up and running.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely, Karen. Other grants can count. Yep. So, yeah.
That's really important. And like you said, the organisation look at it and go, oh, these people looked at, they found some more extra money. That counts.
Yeah. Expenditure. So make sure that you let us know, is this item covered by the NATSIMO grant? So if you are, so you put in, do other grants count? Just say you've got 2 other funders for your big tour. Let us know where you've spent our money and tick the box there. And that makes it easier for when our grant assessors are reading it to know where you've thought about our funding can sit with the broader, with your broader kind of expenses. Now, anything is with your total income and your expenditure, it all has to equal. Like it's got to balance. You've got to balance the budget. So yeah, I said other grants cover marketing. So this is strictly for touring. We don't particularly need to know a great deal about the marketing side of the tour. It's just more if you're creating content as you tour and you want to put that as part of your touring expenses, which is completely eligible. If you've got budget notes, like if you're looking at this going, oh my God, this is a mess. I don't like, how are they going to read it? If you can't read the budget you've sent to us, we won't be able to read it. So even notes to justify your expenses really, really does come, it does help when the assessors are going through the applications. So this risk here, the risk component is just what happens if a gig gets cancelled? It's flooded, the festival's not going ahead. You can just go, well, the risk is if this gig doesn't go ahead, then you could say something like, we will cancel the show and we will come back at a later stage. Or we can say we will try and arrange another show in the same location, but in a different venue. Things like that. Just it just shows us that you've had a bit of thought about what will happen if you don't, if something disastrous happens when you've planned a tour. And Rusty, it happens, hey.
It does. Hey, the thing is with application forms, please ask all the questions, ask all the dumb questions, because we don't know what you want to ask, but those questions can be, okay, we can help you on that question. And that's really important. So, you know, don't be frightened to say what you need to say on your application form, because we don't know what you want. But we can, and it like touring's it's hard work, eh, Leah?
Hard work, but it's fun work. It's the best part of being a musician is playing live. But our team at NATSIMO, we're all artists. So everything that we do is always going to be tailored from the artist perspective. Hence why we said when we do these grants, you know, how do we get money to our artists that, you know, want to record, want to create some content or promote their releases, want to tour. That's at the heart of what we do. It's really artist centric. This is for domestic touring. So we've got a question in the chat saying, does this is this for international or national? This is for domestic touring only. If you do want to travel, if you're looking at international travel, I recommend that you contact Music Australia.
One thing we haven't discussed is what happens after the application form comes in. So once you've submitted your application form, we've selected a panel of peer assessors. They're external peer assessors. They have nothing to do with the NATSIMO or APRA AMCOS, and we've chosen them simply because they are Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander. They are musicians, artists themselves, and they do have an extensive experience in touring, and they have an extensive experience in reading grant applications and assessing grant applications. So once we receive your application, we check the eligibility of it, make sure that everything in that application is fine to send through the assessors. The assessors then go through and make their judgments and determinations based on the information you've provided in your application. So it's important to be very, very clear in what you write, and how you write it and what you want the assessors to be able to determine. Moving forward, what happens after they make their judgments is that we help them, we facilitate a meeting where they determine the final recipients of the grant, and then our team informs the people who were successful and who weren't successful. So you're really writing the grant for other Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander artists with experience in this industry, who are external to us. So all we really do at NATSIMO is facilitate that opportunity and help you to apply, and then inform you at the end of the process. But
it is independent. We don't have anything to do with that. And every grant that we've had, we've made sure we've pulled people that understand what it's like to be a musician from an artist perspective and have extensive experience in that particular field. So people that knew what it was like to make records, people that knew how to run marketing campaigns and knew what it was like to kind of create content. And so for this one, we've got judges that understand touring really well.
And the other thing too is, like, you know, just you put an application form in. You know, I've had so many grants put in, I've been rejected quite a few times.
Yes.
No, but don't be disheartened about that, because the more you put in, you'll see a light in the tunnel. They'll say that's a great application form. One thing I've learned from reading grants with philanthropy is that you have a pile of grants this big, and you read through it and you put a new pile in and say, this is the grants you don't read. It's about your application. How good is your application form?
Yes.
And your storytelling is really, really important to have. And that's the best information I can pass on to you as a person who's been reading grants for such a long time. But yeah.
It is, no, but you're right. That's absolutely valuable. And you do need to think about this, like, who is reading it? If I'm reading this and I'm not understanding it, like, you really need to make it compelling for the person who's on the other side reading 100 grant applications. What makes your grant stand out?
Absolutely.
And then if you don't get it, it's not a reflection on the quality of your art, your music, and anything that you do. It all comes down to how many applications were on that round and the particular people, like whoever was in it, like what happened on the day. By in no means is it a reflection or you should not feel unsuccessful in your art and your craft if you don't get a grant. I've applied for many grants and never got them as well. Like it's just, yeah. Don't be disheartened is what I would encourage you all to say, Ms. Rusty. Yes, reminder, we aren't a grants organisation. This will be our last grant. So it's been fantastic that Music Australia and Creative Australia had trust in us to give us the funds in the first place. And it has been an experience, I tell you, for the team learning how grants work. But we really love that we can get money to our artists, because that's a priority for us. Karen's got one question. Can a tour consist of different festivals? Absolutely, Karen, it can. What's the best resource place to contact when trying to book a gig nationally?
That's a hard question. Depends.
It's a hard question.
I mean, Lily, that if you find a person that you want to work closely with that actually find you gigs, that helps. If that person doesn't help you and all they chase is the money, you don't want to work with them.
What I would say is, if there is an artist that is currently touring Australia that you like think about, and they're playing venues that you would like to play in, follow that artist. So, great touring live artists. If you if you really like what Budger has been doing, have a look and see some of the locations he's been playing. If you like Dean Brady, have a look at Emma Donovan is actually probably a really good reference point, because people like Emma have been touring a lot with the past couple of records she's made. Have a think of artists that you like and see the touring path that they've made, their tour posters, their websites. And then, you've got to do a lot of homework. You've got to research the venue. You've got to go, how many capacity venue is this? A venue might be represented by a booker, and you might need to reach out to the booker and say, hey, do you have any information on the venues that you currently book for? Because as an artist, I'd like to put together a tour and I'd really like to play in your venue. So there's no one gig guide, but I encourage you to look to the community of artists that you admire and you want to have a career like, and see where they're playing is always a good start.
It's kind of reaching out is the hardest part, isn't it?
Yeah.
Especially if you're young artists coming through, people look at you and go, oh, I don't know who you are, but at least you're having a crack,
I think that's important. Yeah. Don't be discouraged if someone says no. It's once again, it's not a reflection of your music. It really isn't. You just have to, in music, you end up hearing no more than you hear the word yes, and you've got to realize that it's got nothing to do with you personally. So yeah, don't be disheartened by the process. So thank you everyone for attending, and Rusty, thank you so much for your time.
It was important to talk to people about yarning to you guys too. It's really important.
Yeah. All right, we say bye-bye, and till next time.
All right, talk soon. Okay, bye.